you a student, mentor, or parent that loves robotics?
Then you're in the right place.
Up-to-date info on all things robotics. This
is the RoboZone Podcast
with your host, Pete Ekman. The RoboZone Podcast is brought to you by Kettering University. It's a Kettering-built world.
Hi, this is Pete Ekman from the RoboZone Podcast. This is the 16th episode of the RoboZone Podcast, and with me today, I have a member from each of the teams of the winning alliance from the St. Louis Championship. For anyone that missed that coverage, look on RoboZone TV, and you can see the blogging that we did while we were there. But I want to welcome first Cory. Cory, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cory Walters. I am the drive coach for Stryke Force 2767, and we are out of Kalamazoo, Michigan.
And Jerry, you too.
Jerry Culp, one of the lead mentors for Stryke Force, also out of Kalamazoo.
Okay, and we have Joseph or Joe.
Joe. Joe Jagadics from Lightning Robotics 862 out of Canton, Michigan.
And finally, we have Kevin.
Hi, Kevin Killian, head coach of the Pascack Pioneers out of Montvale, New Jersey, with a whole bunch more Pioneers here listening in and probably going to join in as well.
So can I get a hello from all the Pioneers at once?
Hello!
There we go. I love it. I love it. So I want to welcome all you guys to the podcast. Taking time out of your Sunday after we had our first week of vacation, as I call it, or robo hangover is another term I had for it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I want to welcome you guys to the podcast. For anyone that didn't watch the stuff at St. Louis, it was an amazing event. For me personally, it was my first time at Worlds and the last time at St. Louis. So we did everything from watching these guys win the championship to I myself was at Robo Prom. And if there's did any of the Pioneers go to Robo Prom?
Yes, we did.
Oh, yeah. I was the one that jumped on stage and started pumping up the crowd. And literally for anyone, and I've made this reference for the last week, when the song got to a hopping stage, when they played a song that had hopping involved, the floor of that place was going up 4 inches and down 4 inches. I'm not lying. It was like a giant trampoline. It was terrifying, yes. So the first question I have for you guys tonight, and we're going to start with you, Cory, is please give me a little bit of a history of your team and how did you do during the regular season through Steamworks?
So the history of our team, we were founded in 2009. It was essentially just a homeschool group. That was before we started getting our sponsorships from Stryker. And the mentors that were there at the time were essentially literally dumpster diving for parts, trying to scavenge around the robot. As it went on, we gained sponsorship from Stryker. And then we are been building out of a mid-link business park the past few years. This previous season is the most successful season we've had to date, obviously, as the record would show. But the season went really well. We went to St. Joe. We won at St. Joe. Went to East Kentwood. Then we won at East Kentwood. Went to the Ford Field at MSC. Ended up getting picked up by the second-seeded team. We won Ford Field, and then we're finalists at MSC. Went to Dolly Field at Worlds. Ranked 1, picked the Poofs, picked Lightning, picked the Pioneers, and took the whole thing home.
You picked the winners, right? You picked the winners. You
That's
guys are all winners. You have the blue banner that I'm totally jealous of. I'll be chasing for the rest of my life. So, Jerry, do you have, as another member of the Stryke Force, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, when you go back to the beginning, Stryker and several of us that work at Stryker were not involved when the homeschool team was getting started. But within a year or so, we got exposed to it, and a number of us were looking at each other. And this is stuff we do for a living. A number of us do surgical robotics. And we were looking at each other and saying, well, if we don't help, then who? And so that's really what kind of got us jump-started. And several of us have competed at different things all of our lives. And the ability to do this and impact kids, it just doesn't get much better than this. So that was really kind of what kickstarted all of this, and then we've been at it ever since.
And I'm getting now finally, it's Sunday and I'm still catching up. I finally figured out where Striker and Strike Force, the two, yeah, I didn't put the two together until Cory started talking, but I understand. And I'm along the lines of you, Jerry. I didn't have this when I was a kid. I'm a little bit older. I joke. I talked to Mr. Bosey. I call him Mr. Bosey. I don't call him by his first name. Talked to Mr. Bosey a couple weeks ago when we were at Michigan State championships, and I said, I'm so jealous of kids that get to do this because I didn't get to do it. I was the guy that ran down to Radio Shack when Radio Shack was still around, and they're a little bit around, but not as fluent as they once were. Buying parts and putting it together and see what you could build out of it. So now that they have a sport out of it, it's awesome. But Joe, tell us a little bit about the Lightning and where you guys come from.
Yep. So Lightning Robotic, like I said, is based out of Canton, Michigan. We actually started competing in F.I.R.S.T in the 2000 season. We were originally 465. A couple years later, we changed the number to 862 for some various reasons, but the kids carried over from the two teams. We started from a pretty small team of just a handful of kids and a couple mentors, started by our electronics teacher. And, now we're running with over 120 kids, 40 mentors, and gone through a lot of changes and growth and, challenges over the last few years and over the last 18 years, really. So we've been around and we're excited and looking forward to the future. So this season, to kind of tie into that, we went to the Ann Arbor Pioneer and Lake Superior State districts. We ended up as the number 8 seeded team at both. Got picked up by the 1 or 2 seeded alliance at each of those. Got knocked out in the semifinals at both in 3 matches, no less. So they were very balanced at that. And then at MSC, we were seeded 2nd in our division, and for a 3rd time, got knocked out in the semifinals in 3 matches. So our kids were excited that we were doing pretty well, but they just wanted to get past that semifinals hump, and they had an opportunity to do that last weekend. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think in the end they made out. I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
definitely.
I think in the end they can, they could say struggle, world championship. Maybe we could make a meme out of that. I'll wait for Kevin's team to do that, post it online, and then tag us, okay? So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about your team, where you guys hail from, and then a little bit of background about them.
All right, sure. This is the 13th year for the Pioneers, and we were started from Mercedes-Benz back in 2005. We've been to champs 12 of those 13 years. In fact, the last 10 in a row. And we keep going back and forth between our robot leading the charge or our outreach leading the charge. As I said, we've been in champs a lot of times. The closest we ever came to making it to Einstein was the division finals back in 2010. We've been as high as the first pick of the 2nd alliance, and all the way up and down the row there. It had been a bit of a frustrating year before we went to champs this year because, in my opinion, we had probably maybe the 3rd best robot we'd ever built, 2nd or 3rd best robot we'd ever built. But as everyone who's played Steamworks can attest, a lot has to do with scheduling, alliance partners, and so forth. And we just seemed to have bad luck tournament after tournament. It seemed like our record didn't match our capabilities, and we just kept forging ahead. And I'll turn it over to one of the other kids to give the absolute detail about how we did at the tournaments we went to if they want. But we always had that feeling that we're better than our record shows, and it was very gratifying to be selected by Strike Force in the number 1 alliance. And we're happy to hold our own all the way through St. Louis champs. Anyway, like I said, if you want a little bit of anyway, so we qualified because we did well enough within MAR to make it in as one of the teams that goes based on total points earned in the district model, but also because we won champs engineering inspiration last year, which of course gives you an automatic bid the following year. So like I said, both the outreach, non-tech side of the house as well as the robot. Tyler, you want to say a thing about how we did in our various tournaments this year?
Sure. We competed at 4 tournaments going into championships, and as you, Coach, said before, we had a little bit of a rough luck this whole season, and I know our whole drive team, we did great as being the first year for all of us except for our human player in the airship. It was a learning curve going through this whole season. But even from our first competition in the Southwest Virginia District tournament, where we were 32nd ranked out of 38, we really felt that we played better than our record showed. And each competition, we found that our record slowly increased, our rank in the tournament slowly increased. In our 2 district competitions in Mar, we were 15th and 16th ranked, respectively. And then finally, our district championships, we were 5th ranked. So we felt that we grew as a team throughout the season. And even though the result didn't show, a lot of times we felt that we were having fun throughout the whole season. And it was a great experience leading up to championships. And once we got to championship, it just made it that much more worth it.
And the young man that is speaking, can you state your name so that we can give you your due credit?
Sure. Tyler Jacobson, Team 1676, Pascack Pioneers, the drive coach of Pascack Pioneers.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. So the next question I got, and thank you everyone for giving us a little bit of, and the listeners of the RoboZone podcast, a little bit about where you guys come from. Here's the doozy of the next question I have for you. And Cory, you're going to be the first time I ask this question, each question. So I know you have a grin on your face. So how do you like the game Steam works? What is your thought when you end the season? I know you got a world championship, so take that away. I don't want to take it away from you, but say you didn't win the world championship. What did you think about the game this year? Because there's been a lot of controversy or a big discussion about, too many points for climbs, not enough points on fuel, that type of thing. So what do you think about Steamworks this year?
I think the first few weeks was tough. It was just a lot of robots running gears up and down the field, and no one could really see that action of the gear going on this spring just because visually that was hard to see. It was just a lot of robots running up and down the field. As the game progressed and fuel started to come in and the gear runners got a lot better and people were starting to hit their climbs when they needed to, it started to get better. And not until we got to like MSC and Worlds did we really see the game become what I think F.I.R.S.T meant it to be, where there's a lot of gear running. You had 4 rotors getting done really fast, and then you had a lot of people that had the shooters would start shooting. If you didn't have the shooter, then you'd go and play defense, hoping that you beat the other team to 4 rotors. As far as the scoring value went, the gears, I think we're okay with how they gave him points. The fuel definitely undervalued a little bit. And then the climbing, I think they should have had the climbing at 40 points instead of 50. That way you wouldn't get absolutely blown out if you missed a climb or if the other team out-climbed you by 1. As far as what they do for the fuel points, I don't know if they do instead of every 3rd ball, every 2 balls is a point or something like that. Like
not with that shooter you got. If I want to be competitive, I don't want you to have a point for every 2 balls because I saw that shooter in action. As a guy that had a slow shooter but methodical shooter on his bot, I like 3 balls. I think it could have gone to 5 for one when it came to you guys and Cheesy Poofs and was that 25 the 2500 series bot out of Canada that was on our Curry field. I mean, my God, they had a double shooter, and all you saw was a stream. I called it a rope of fuel.
Yep, it was. Yeah, we shot, and Jared can attest to it. We shot literally 10,000 balls through that shooter, trying to get it right. And wiffle balls, they whiffle as they go through the air, and that is a complete pain. But
and Jerry,
overall, I think the game was good on the high end of the game. On the early weeks, it was a struggle to watch.
Jerry, do you have anything to add to Cory from Strike Force point of view?
Well, it will probably take me several years of therapy to get over the engineering exercise of trying to precisely throw those wiffle balls. That was something that I worked with several kids and we focused pretty heavily on, and that was quite an undertaking. That was harder than it sounds. Probably the only thing about the game that I look at and scratch my head a little bit on, when you look at getting 4 rotors versus busting the boiler, there was a ranking point for achieving that in the qualification matches. When you got into the finals, the elimination matches, getting 4 rotors was 100 points. Busting the boiler was only 20 points. And I never really understood why they changed the weighting of that so much. I mean, 5-1 going from qualifications to the elimination rounds. But overall, I thought the game had a lot of interesting elements. It was technically challenging. It gave the kids a lot to focus on. I would agree with Cory. I think in the beginning part of the season, it was maybe a little hard to follow for the audience. I think if you were someone in the audience who truly understood the game, it was very interesting to watch, but you needed to understand it. It was not all that self-explanatory as far as how the scoring worked, and you weren't going to teach that to somebody in a 30-second elevator pitch.
Right. And Joe, do you have a different viewpoint, or do you kind of agree with Cory and Jerry?
I agree, pretty much with it, with what they said. It was a little bit of a slow start for the game, but I think overall I enjoyed the game. I liked that it was dynamic and kind of required all three teams on the field to work together on an alliance to really put up a really good score. So I liked that it kind of drove teamwork within the alliance, and I liked that there was the two different game pieces. So there was really 2 paths or 3 paths if you wanted to do everything that a team could choose to go down. So I think we ended up with a little bit of a variety of robots again this year. Some years, everyone tries to do the same challenge and the robots all end up looking fairly similar. But I think it ended up with some diversity in the robots, so I thought that was pretty cool. I like that aspect of it. So,
how about Kevin and the Pioneers? Can you guys give us a little bit more of what you liked or didn't like about Steamworks?
Well, sure. I mean, I want to echo what they said about the point values. I think it would have been a better game with a different distribution of point values. And for any further commentary, I want to throw it to Evan Cho, who is our driver this year.
Hi. I pretty much agree with everything. I think that the point system was a little unbalanced towards how much climbing mattered to missing a climb meant a lot to our team. We went through lots of matches where we lose because an last member couldn't climb, and it just kept happening. But besides that, I thought it was a good game overall. I liked the diversity of it, like people were saying, and I liked the fact that there were the 5-person drive team. I thought that allowing one more person be involved in a big piece of the team was a good choice, and it allowed for a much bigger experience.
You guys have all said a little some of the similar thoughts that I have on the game, and I'm glad that this game, and Joe kind of elaborated on it, is you could pick a different thing that you could be really good at, especially if you're like a rookie team. Like I was at Kettering Week 2. If I'm wrong, someone will let me know. Trust me. One thing about podcast people will let you know. They had an 8th seeded, or the captain of the 8th seed with his rookie team out of Flat Rock, and they took down number 1, 2, and 4. But all they did was run bots, and they knew how to climb. So it was a great year. I think this is one of those years, as far as I've been concerned with F.I.R.S.T., that you saw more high-seeded teams win local regional events. And then when you got to the championships, especially the world championships, you really saw those bots that were really good at certain things. So the next question I have for you, and Cory, you ready? I see you grinning. So how did the qualifying matches go for your team, and how did it differ from those events that we saw in Michigan during the regular season?
You comparing championships to MSC, essentially.
Yeah, that's fine. Some people may say, and this is an in Michigan thing, some people may say that the Michigan State Championship is harder to win than the World Championship. I've heard that said. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I could see what it says because we have so many teams in Michigan.
Sure.
But, those local events that you guys did, those first couple events, those regional or district events, how do you think that compared to the World Championship? Was it harder, easier, more elaborate?
The 2 district events we went to, it was more of just executing. Like, you needed to get your climbs, you needed to get that auto gear, you needed to get 3 rotors, and they need a little bit of fuel to offset the tiebreaker. So the district events was just executing, making sure you did your job. Rarely did you have to really start executing high game strategy to try and get the win, unless you're playing against a powerhouse alliance. At Michigan State, it was kind of like a breath of fresh air because everybody at that point should have been able to climb. Everybody's able to run gears really well, which now allowed us to just really focus on shooting fuel. Because we knew that our other two alliances could get the third rotor, and we could just do fuel, then help run gears, and kind of do what we needed to do as best for the alliance. At Worlds, same story as Michigan State. You have a lot of teams capable of running gears, a lot of teams capable of climbing, but we started to run into more shooters, and then that became difficult. I'm looking at the Blue Alliance right now. Our last 5 matches out of our 10, we got 4 rotors and 40 kPa and won all of them. So our last 5 matches, we pulled 4 RP out of every single one. And a lot of that had to do with just being able to focus on shooting. And as soon as we were done shooting, we just helped run gears and get that 4th rotor going. So the game kind of got easier as you went because you had more capable robots. But it just got a lot faster. The pace was faster. Gears were getting done faster. Everyone was shooting sooner and faster, and it just became a much quicker game as we went on.
So, Jerry, do you agree? Do you think Worlds was a hyperdrive compared to the regular season?
Yeah, it was. The execution time was much quicker. When we dissect the game, we tend to do some pretty simple time studies and try to figure out, okay, what is the asymptote of cycle time on each of these elements? And we concluded even that first day that by the time you get to Worlds, everybody's going to get 4 rotors, everybody's going to climb. This is going to be a shootout. And we decided that, if you're going to build a robot that's got the capacity to go that far, you're going to have a shooter. And I think throughout the season, that was a pretty big asset we had. We were able to shoot our way out of several holes at different events because we could go get that single ranking point. Even if you weren't going to win the match, you could always get out of there with a single ranking point. And that ended up, that was huge. Without that shooting capability, we would not have had the season we did. And then by the time you get down to St. Louis, you just better be really, really good at everything because you just don't get to make any mistakes.
Yeah, very good. Very good. And I love the word usage, Jerry. What was the asymptote? Is that what the word you just used was? I think that's by far the best word I've had on the podcast this year. I'm going to have to go look that one up. I'm honest. I don't know what that one is. I'll go look it up afterward. Thank you for Google for giving me the answer to that. Joe, sorry. How about your viewpoint on championship, world championship matches versus the regular season matches?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Cory said. And I mean, I see this year in and year out on all the games. That you definitely see a progression of the games from week 1 to week 4, week 5, and then to the state championship, and then to the championship events. For me, what really kind of stepped it up was even at our first district event. I don't think the 4th rotor turned at all the entire time. Maybe there was 1 or 2 that I missed, but right off the bat at our second district event, alliances were getting 4 rotors turning pretty quickly, and that was, I think, a week 5 event. That was really, hey, the pace really picked up. And then once you got to states was kind of the same thing. The 4th rotor was turning pretty consistently right off the bat. And then, yeah, it really, like Cory said, it came down to, at the high level, a shootout on the shooting side. So I definitely enjoy watching the game progress, though. I think you learn it. You kind of learn it a little at a slower pace at the early events, and then build through the season. So.
Okay, Kevin. Now you guys are from New Jersey. Okay, so we don't know that much about how things are running in New Jersey because Cory, Jerry, Joe, myself, we're all here in Michigan, so we're used to what we see at the district events, and then at the regional events, and then at the our own state championships. But give us a little bit insight on how things are run in New Jersey. I mean, did what you heard from these other team coaches kind of echo the same thing in New Jersey, or is it different in that area?
There's a lot of the same thing, although I don't think we quite got toward the asymptote as rapidly as you did in Michigan. We similar things though, and I think we were gratified that if I think back to our day 1 and day 2 brainstorming, the season went pretty much as we thought, with fuel not meaning much early and then meaning more later, as well as 4 rotors starting to show up and becoming expected at a certain point in time. I think it kind of went the way we expected it to. But hearing from the Michigan folks about you reach a certain level by week 3, certain level by week 5, we were maybe a week or so behind in MAR, just because of how many teams we have and how much collaboration we have, and the ability to one up each other and really band together. I think we really admire the Michigan folks at your ability, the density of teams, at how you always make each other better. And we were trying to achieve that in MAR, but again, we don't have the same density, but we're getting there. I think our CEO and mechanical captain, Anthony Izzo, has something to say about how things went this year. Anthony.
Yeah, I think kind of like everybody else was saying, the matches were pretty much the same from quals to championships, just different paces. They started off where a lot of strategies were just get the gears, always climb, and then either shoot or play defense, depending on what you can do. For us personally, that meant in the matches where it mattered, get the 1 or 2 points from shooting, as we were a slower shooter, and then hope that the rest of your alliances really can climb, because as our driver Evan was saying before, that did have a pretty big impact on us a lot of times when one team couldn't climb, and just because it was weighted so many points, we would often lose because of it. But a lot of it would help if you were good enough early on when there weren't many people doing it. If you can get that 4 rotors and that extra ranking point, it made a pretty big difference to how you ended up getting out in the rankings.
Kevin, I love how you're spreading the wealth of your team. We've heard from 4 members from your team. I absolutely love that, so that they can we can get the input from them, because so many times, as drive coaches or head mentors or mentors, we listen to the kids, but rarely do we get to listen from the other student athletes, as I call them. I'm a prior sports coach, so I like that this is just as athletic as, you got to lift a bot, right? You got to, I think sometimes you do more workout in robotics than you do in football, but that's my own opinion. So thank you for spreading the wealth there, Kevin. I greatly appreciate you having the kids tell us how they're thinking. So, Cory, the next one I got for you, and you're already grinning. So, what do you think the value of your team brought to the winning alliance? I know that's a jaded question for you because you were the alliance captain, right? So, I'll ask that question to the rest of the alliance partners because you were the captain. So, I'm going to ask you this specific one. How did you go about picking your partners? How did you pick your alliance partners? Everyone wants to know this, right? I know the cheesy poofs were your first pick. I get it. The cheesy poofs, the cheesy poofs, the cheesy poofs, the cheesy poofs. I get it. But how did you go about? Did you use scouting data? How did you pick your alliance partners when you first got the first pick?
So that was quite the experience, because being the number 1 seed coming out of your division at Worlds means you automatically get to pick. You get to pick first. So you pick the poofs, right? So we ended up going to the Cheesy Poofs Hotel Friday night for about 3.5, 4 hours, combining our data together to figure out what we want, what our strategy is, what we're looking for. So they had this thing that the Poofs were using called Robot Tinder. And essentially,
I'm not going to make any joke about that because I know from Kevin's side I'm going to hear a bunch of laughter in the background. So we'll just that whatsoever.
So essentially, the robot would pop up on screen. There's a yes, no, maybe button, and then we went through the criteria of what we wanted. What we wanted was we wanted really fast gear runners. We already had 2 shooters. We were looking for the retrieval zone peg in auto. And we were looking for robots that could get human fed through the feeder station. We didn't really want a ground pickup because us and the Poofs already had one, and we didn't want too much conjunction going on down there. We had a solid retrieval zone peg. We saw them at States, actually missed the peg one time and go back and do it again in auto, which was very impressive. And the Pioneers had a really good center auton gear. The other things we looked for was really strong drivetrains, knowing that we didn't want anybody to miss their climbs at the end playing rope chicken. So we looked at the Poofs data, we looked at our data, and we just looked at who are the best gear runners in our field. Now, both the Pioneers and 862 were like our tier 1 gear runners. Both of our alliances were amazing gear runners in our data when we got done Friday. And the fact that we got both of you guys was amazing. I think both Pioneers and A62 were on the top 10 on Strike Force's data as far as gear runners. I couldn't tell you what the Poofs had them as, but both of them were really good at running gears and hitting their climbs.
And Jerry, do you have anything to add to that as far as Strike Force is concerned?
No, I think Cory pretty much summed it up. It's just about having good scouting data and knowing what metrics you're looking for and making sure that your partners have got a history of delivering, because at that level, you just don't get many do-overs, and you better make sure it's a pretty high reliable hit rate on these things.
You know, I have to be honest with you guys before I ask Joe for his opinion on this. When we didn't make the finals for my two teams, I had two teams there, but I heard about certain alliances being chosen, right? And one of the alliances I heard was the Lost Gorillas, which is out of Michigan, the Flint area, and they chose the Robo Wranglers. Well, the two biggest names I heard all week, not to take anything away from our teams, was Robo Wranglers and Cheesy Poofs. On the bus, 2 weeks before we got on the bus, the whole time we were there, Cheesy Poofs and Robo Wranglers. And then I heard the Robo Wranglers got knocked out. Now, I got to interview them, which was a great interview, but they got knocked out in the quarters of the semis before they even hit the finals, right? So I was like, holy cow, you know, these power teams, and I call it a power team, or power alliance if you want to say so, got knocked out. And I'm like, holy, you know, what's going on? It's kind of crazy. And that was what led to the, you know, the culmination of the event and you guys winning the championship, of course. But it was kind of interesting. So, Joe, what did your team bring to this alliance? What do you think you guys did the best?
Well, the one thing that we wanted to be going into this year the whole time was we wanted to be able to deliver consistently. So, and actually one of our highest priorities on the robot was being able to do the auton, deliver the gears in auton and not just the center gear. So our programming team worked really hard on those side gear autons. They tried a couple different versions until they finally came up with the specific recipe they used to get what we had at the championship. And then, you know, we wanted to be solid with gear running, and we wanted to have a really reliable climber. And our record was, you know, not the best in the win-loss category, but I think we showed consistency throughout the qualifying. So, and I think, you know, we just brought a consistent robot to the alliance, and I think we started out wanting to be consistent running gears, and that's what we did. So we're happy with that, and we're really excited to get a chance to work with Strike Force and the Poofs and the Pioneers. It was a really great alliance. It was a lot of fun to work with all the teams.
I think what you've proven, Joe, and I hope people that listen to this podcast and are in robotics and F.I.R.S.T really listen to this. It's not about what the win-loss is. It's about how you prove yourself. And smart teams such as Strike Force and Cheese Poofs do their due diligence, to use my word for the day, due diligence. Look that one up, Google. They know who the good teams are, and they know who proves themselves, because we've all been in that situation where we start off a competition and we're, you know, in the lowest half, or at least I've experienced this, right? And then you guys really come out that second half and you prove yourselves, and good scouting teams know this. So that's as a scouting mentor, I have that flag in the ground saying it's, you know, scouting is so important, and it's hard to get kids motivated for that. So, Kevin, tell us about what your team brought to this alliance. What do you guys think you did the best to win that championship and help the alliance out?
Okay, for that one, I'm going to turn it over to our pilot, Stephen Mormile.
What our robot brought to the table was, from day one, we knew that we're never going to be a top tier robot. We knew that we are a very good, reliable robot. And from day one, we're like, we got to be doing gears. We got to help get that fourth rotor going. That was our main priority, followed by climbing, which we did 100% of the time. We got our center auto gear 100% accurate. So that was something that we always forced or try to push during matches that we would get the center for auto, and then we would try to get our climb at the end. But as the build season went on, we realized that our shooter wasn't the best. So then we knew that was only going to be a tiebreaker. And then as the finals came on, we became a strict gear runner, which we were very fast and consistent at.
I have the highest respect for the pilots this year. Those guys got screamed at, yelled at. If you didn't hear rope, or gear, or something of that nature, or spin it, I was shouting. I have a pretty booming voice in a gymnasium. So if I think it got better as the competitions went on. I didn't hear too much of it at championships, but I give all the credit for pilots. That was a heck of a position to be put in. I mean, you're kind of centered, the TV's on you, everyone's watching your every little things. For those guys that are pilots out there, good job doing your job, because that was not easy to do, especially as a student. We're almost done with this interview. The one question, it's a fun question, and I'm directing this at Cory first. Do you think there's going to be water in next year's game? Everyone talks about water, right? Everyone, see, the kids are all about, I want water. I don't think they understand water and electronics don't mix. I think that, the older guys like us know that, hey, do you know what we'd have to do to waterproof something in the heat? And I'm sure Jerry's already going through the calculations in his head, because he seems to think that way. So do you think there's going to be water in next year's game, Cory?
I don't think you'll ever see water in an FRC game. Just the logistics behind it of, hey, we're going to set up an FRC game in your gymnasium. Let's hope it doesn't leak and ruin your whole floor.
Well, what about the leak? I mean, the Daily Field had like a river going on it while we're at World Championship. So we're already there. So I don't think you can call it, that one.
Well, the only good thing with the Daily Field getting water on it was that it was on the blue side of the field, and we were going to be red the rest of the day. We didn't really have to deal with that. Our shooters got the capability of shooting farther than what we have shown at Worlds. We do have the capability of shooting on that side of the field, and we probably would have hit the plastic that was over there.
Nice. You know what? Now you're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to go out there, do a reveal video. It's going to be on this podcast. Now you got to shoot one from the opposite boiler into the other boiler, and we're going to hound you until that happens. So, Jerry, please help Cory get that done. I'm going to hold you responsible as the senior mentor. Right, Jerry?
Not a problem.
We're here first.
We're ready to demonstrate that.
Jerry, do you think there's going to be water in next year's game?
Well, yeah, I've spent a lot of years messing around with race cars on racetracks, including racing in the rain and driving in the rain. And you do a lot to waterproof a race car to make sure that you don't have issues. So if they want to have a rain game, I say bring it on, because we're ready. But logistically, it's undoable. There's just no way to execute that. To Cory's point, the amount of water you would have to have, how that is managed, avoiding leaks, you'd have water everywhere. It's just unmanageable. So I don't think we'll ever see a water game.
I thought we would have sought a stronghold. I mean, they could have easily put a little tank there, and if you went over the moat, you splashed yourself, you shorted out your bot, you're done. So and no one would ever go over the boat, or over the moat, like they didn't go over the drawbridge or the portcullis. Portcullis. See, I could actually remember that. I have nightmares about that word. So, Joe, do you think we're going to have water in next year's game?
I got to kind of follow suit with those guys. I just don't see it. I've worked at a lot of events, and just the logistics of setting up the field as it is pretty tough. Adding water to it would just be, the event coordinators would be pulling their hair out. So they're probably crossing their fingers right now for no.
Okay, so I'm not going to ask you, Kevin, if you think, but I want to know from the kids. Do the kids want water in next year's game?
Well, I'm ready to throw this to one of our kids, but I just want to make the comment that we actually think it could be practically done, and Sean Jensick, our operator, is going to tell you how. But I think F.I.R.S.T will never do it, even if it's practical, because they love
it already.
They love the fact that everybody keeps hoping for it year after, and if it ever happens, then of course, then the charm will be gone. But I'm going to throw it over here to Sean Jensick. What do you think, Sean?
I don't think they do a water game. Just the
as the main objective to do things like in water, but maybe at like the end of the game, like this year was climbing, you have something with like a mini bot and like a small pool or something like that.
Or how about we put all the drive team and all the pit crew in jackets, and then we could just shoot them with super soakers while they're trying to fix their bot before their next match. How about that? I think that's a good idea. Don Bosey, I hope you're listening to this. Please implement that. Even if it's like an off-season event, once we're done, like IRI or something like that, let's do that. Please, 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 please. So I want to thank everyone tonight for giving me their time, especially the kids, because they got to be studying. Isn't it past your bedtime already? It's like 8:74. I'm just saying you're in the final week, so you guys are all competing. I think everyone said at the end of July, right, in New Hampshire?
Yes.
And everyone wants this alliance that I'm interviewing. Everyone wants this alliance to bring home the quote unquote undisputed world championship, correct?
Yeah.
Oh, come! I thought I'd get some kids, yelling or hooting and hollering, maybe. I don't know. So, the couple things I've learned from this podcast, and I'm going to go trademark this right now, is Robo Tender and Rope Chicken. I have never heard those two terms to tonight, so thanks, Cory, for those, because I'm going to put that on a T-shirt. It's going to say, "Do you want to play Rope Chicken?" And then just put a bot there so they don't think other. And Joe's cracking up to the point where he's turning red and almost crying. So I'm going to let you guys go for the night. So as each one of you guys sign off, Cory, and we'll start with you, and then Jerry, and so on. Just tell us how we can find your team, or your name, how we find your team, and how we can follow them on social media. So Cory, go.
My name's Cory Walters, drive coach for 2767 Strike Force. You can follow us on Facebook at 2767 Strike Force F.I.R.S.T Robotics, and you can also check out our website at strikeforce.org.
Anything to add to that, Jerry, besides your name?
Just Jerry Culp, and if you go to where Cory said, you'll find Strike Force.
And Joe, you're up next.
All right, this is Joe Jagadics, the lead mentor and coach for Lightning Robotics. You can find us on Facebook under Lightning Robotics, on Instagram, Lightning Robotics Teammate 62, and Twitter at FRC862. And our website is lightningrobotics.com.
And finally, Kevin.
Okay, with tradition, I'm going to toss this one to Kayla Vincent, who's our leader of management outreach and design. Kayla?
Hi, my name is Kayla Vincent. You can find the Pascack Pioneers on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat under FRC Team 1676, and on Facebook as the Pascack Pioneers.
Again, I want to thank all of you guys, and especially the kids, for staying up, coming to the podcast, giving us probably the best podcast. I'm not sliding anyone else that I interviewed, including Don Bosey. I'm just saying, I have the world championships. I have the world championships on the podcast, and that's rare, right? First of all, there's no podcast last year, so it is rare. This is a first
It's the first time,
right? I want to thank all you guys for attending. I want to thank Strike Force, especially because I have a shout-out coming to you because you guys gave me a T-shirt. So thanks for giving me the T-shirt. That will be on the video version on YouTube. But I want to thank all you guys for coming to the podcast. I'll send you guys the link once it's up and ready. And thank you for your time. I'm signing off. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's get out to the shout-outs. Now, at Worlds, I had some teams that gave me T-shirts in exchange for shout-outs. So the first one I have for tonight is the Lost Gorillas, Team 469. They were gracious enough to give me not only a T-shirt, but a Michigan State Championship T-shirt. So thank you to the Lost Gorillas. Second for tonight is BigMo, Team 314. Thanks for the T-shirt. And finally, the Trisonics, Team 4003, or 4003. Thanks to those teams for the T-shirts, and I will be giving shout-outs at the next episode, so the 17th episode, for the additional teams that gave me T-shirts while I was at Worlds. Thank everyone for listening, for the T-shirts, for the World Championship teams, for coming on the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and SoundCloud. Make sure you visit our YouTube channel. That is RoboZone TV on YouTube. Thanks for your time. Have a great night.
The RoboZone podcast is brought to you by Kettering University. It's a Kettering-built world. Thanks for listening to the RoboZone podcast with your host, Pete Ekman. Find us online at RoboZoneTV.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.